Hello, my name is Anthony Hamilton. I am the CEO of Georgina Energy PLC.
Well, good to see you again. And I know we're speaking all too regularly at the moment, but I kind of feel that this is a case of lots of baby steps moving towards what you're telling me is possible. So you put an operational update today. What do we need to know?
I suppose if people read our prospectus, that's the document we live and die by. So everything we said we were going to do in our prospectus, this is the process we're undertaking to meet those obligations. In the case of Hussar, myself, John Hugh, and a number of TOs, traditional representatives, specialists, rangers, the engineers from Aztec, we're all going to site on the 24th through to the 27th. So that is a process whereby we fly from Perth to Kalgoorlie. We then drive around 1,800 kilometres to a station where we spend the night, and then from there we drive to Hussar. And we'll be on site, and we've got a fair bit of work to do because obviously, as you know, this part of this is the environmental impact study around the well pad. And obviously we're also going to do an inspection and a number of other preliminary things that we need to do to produce reports to give to DEMAs as part of the requirement for the granting of the drilling permit.
Right. Okay. So you're going there from 24th to 27th. So there for a few days. You kind of got the traditional owners there, the engineers there, the environmental consultants there, and you're there. What happens whilst you're there? What happens after you're there? How quickly does this approval come through?
So we've allowed essentially 3 days on site. The 3 days will allow the environmental guys to finish the physical survey. Photographs will be taken. At the same time, we will look at the wellhead. We'll take a pressure reading. There's a couple of other things that we need to do in terms of the roads, access in and out. And then essentially, we'll then we'll drive back to Kalgoorlie, back 1,800 kilometres, catch a flight back to Perth, and then we'll spend a couple of days probably a week to 10 days, putting all the reports together. They'll then be submitted to DEMAs along with everything else, and then it'll be a case of them reviewing everything, and if they're satisfied with everything they've got, then they should grant us our drilling permit.
And so DEMAs, again, for people who aren't aware, what are they?
Department of Energy, Industry, Mineral and Resources. They're a government regulator.
Okay. So with regards to that time, when can you actually get after this thing then? Assuming this permission comes along, you're granted permission to get in with the business of re-entering the well as described to me last time we spoke.
So traditionally in Australia, what happens is permits are usually granted within a week to 10 days of you being on site. So if the permit's granted in early December, then we would aim to be on site relatively quickly in December. And as I said previously, our initial plan is to essentially do a complete inspection of the casing, make sure the pressure, and then bring in an air-cooled rig and drill out the first plug at 30 metres. That's the first stage. It's not something that just happens overnight. And as I said, the actual program is 50 days. So it's a process and we have to follow it. There's a huge amount of safety involved with regard to the fact that we're drilling into a pressure zone. So yeah, it starts. And as I said, we'll be in site in December.
Right. And just a reminder, again, I'll put a link to the previous conversation where you outlined this in detail, but just for the sake of this one, in case people can't be bothered, to go back to that interview, the process from when you start and then you go for that first plug and then and beyond, what's that look like to kind of us actually seeing the goods, the money shot, as it were?
Yeah, the first challenge is to check the casing's okay. Then the pressure test. Then ultimately an air core rig brought in, and we drill out the first plug at 30 metres. We don't expect there to be any problems. We don't expect any pressure behind it. If everything goes according to plan, then a second rig, the much bigger rig, will be brought in, which will then drill through the primary plug, which is at 70 metres. And then it's all the way to the bottom of the hole from there. And that whole program will take about 50 days. And obviously, our plan is to then penetrate the Townsend or subsalt formation. And process is that once we have penetrated the subsalt, that we get gas which contains helium and hydrogen.
Are you funded to do all of this?
We are indeed. We are indeed. We received the proceeds of the placing completed by Oak through August. So yes, we're funded and in line with our prospectus, fully funded to complete the re-entry.
Okay. No, just I think there's some doubt as to whether or not that was the case. Okay, fully funded. Let's talk about Mount Winter again. So you've been through a process with that in terms of with the traditional owners as well. Where do you sit with that now?
So originally, I think previously, as I said to you, our expectation was we had a very good meeting on the 11th of September. There is a very set process that takes place with regard to the approval by the traditional owners to grant the process for the conversion of the application to a full permit. We now know from our Indigenous consultant that the ratification of the traditional owners' approval has been granted and that process is now underway. And we would expect that to be formally given to us in December. But again, the process there is then that when we've got that, then there's an agreement to be reached with regard to access and our work program. And then it goes to the minister in the Northern Territory, and then he grants the permit. And that's, again, just a set procedure you have to follow. But that'll all fall into line with our expectation of what we're doing at Hussar. And yes, that is also fully funded. So we'll bring it to what we call pre-drill.
Okay. I think one of the other things we've talked about in the past is kind of working with, and you've been very clear about your business model to me, working with other groups, oil and gas companies, to advance the business plan. Where are you with that at the moment?
So as we said, post completion of Mount Winter and Hussar, we started with over 200 wells, plugged and abandoned wells, went down to 168, then went down to 20, then went down to 10. We've now got down to 2, and these 2 are held by significant gas production companies. We signed an NDA, which we previously announced, I think, on the 8th of October. And we signed a second NDA with another significant production company. These are production companies because they hold the rights to a number of the wells that we're interested in. And the idea behind that is we now review all the data. We look at the potential for a farm-in. We look at the terms that they are offering or that we're prepared to offer. And the idea behind this is that these become post-completion assets that we can then pursue with our model, which is to re-enter an existing well that has had gas production or gas flow. And in this case, a number of our targets are highly prospective for helium and hydrogen.
Can you be clear as to what this potential partner is wanting out of this versus what you're still yet to discover, which is, I know you're working on the scoping study and you're trying to work out the economics around that. Do you kind of work hand in hand there, or, do they look at things separately?
They're standalone transactions. In the case of the parties that we've signed NDAs with, they are, I suppose the best way to describe it is helium and hydrogen are not core to their fundamental business. And if you look at it this way, probably in production terms, one of the companies probably produces in a month the global helium market in revenues. So for them, it's not a core asset, but for us it is. And so they can see our capability, they look at and understand our approach. And so they're interested in us being able to develop the assets, because effectively it becomes, to quote a famous saying, money for jam.
Okay. So again, I mean, is it sort of inconsequential in the sense that this is just a kind of an exercise of, just a tire kicking exercise, or is this something because it's? I assume that you're talking about companies which are Aussie companies, right?
Correct.
Are they?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So from that point of view, it's kind of interesting to them. So at what point what's the kind of next step? What's the moment where they say, actually, this is of interest, let's talk a little bit further and kind of firm up on some kind of next step agreement?
We're already going through that process right now. We're discussing the terms of potential farming. We are discussing what their expectation is. Bear in mind, the commodities are non-core to what they want to do. But from their perspective, based on what we're doing and the fact that we've identified the potential for them, then essentially we would be taking over the expenditure commitments with a view to re-entering the wells to penetrate the subsalt profile to yield natural gas, helium and hydrogen. And this is not a tire kicking exercise. We are actually going through a detailed evaluation of each of them. A number of all of the targets have well logs. They have, as I said, in some cases, they flowed gas. So we've got a lot of information we're currently reviewing to determine what the best approach would be that'll work for both parties.
Okay. That's kind of interesting, because if I look at other sectors, what they need from partners is some kind of either binding MOU, some kind of offtake agreement, some kind of commercial document which says
this will be a farming agreement, a legally binding farming agreement whereby we will commit to a certain level of expenditure and earn an interest and also undertake a program.
So that's the kind of thing you can go to market and say, if you need to do an equity raise, look at this. If you need debt, look at this. So that farming agreement is really, really important to you as a next step. So you're saying there's no sort of intermediary step. Farming is the next step.
Absolutely, yeah. Once we've completed the review of the technical data, the next point will be to negotiate the farming. We already have a draft farming from one of the partners. And so we're reviewing all of those. But right now our priority is Hussar and Mount Winter. So that's just one of the many things that our team, which is relatively small, is dealing with. And, and unless we grow extra arms and legs, there's only so many pieces of paper you can review with your eyes and deal with things. So this is definitely a post-completion Hussar and Mount Winter. And it would get to the point where if we can reach agreement with the parties, then we would formally execute a farming and that would be announced. And there'd be a timeline that will go with that.
Right. So there's a few things to do before you reach that point.
Correct.
But December looks like a big month for you. I mean, getting on site.
Very busy. Yeah, absolutely.
Is a big deal. And I guess a proof point for you to have got that far, and then it's a case of what comes out of the ground will be a major stepping point for you.
And I mean, it's the $50 million question. It's answered by drilling into the subsalt. And as I've said previously, we'll only truly know what we've got when we drill it and we flow test it. And that's the ultimate answer. And also, with the case with Hussar, the reprocessing of the seismic data and the revised mapping is also being done at the same time. So, as I think I said previously, this is a massive structure that we've got. So there's a whole lot more to all of this than even we originally anticipated in terms of the scale and size. And that's also one of the reasons why the scoping study won't be ready till January next year, because of the scale and size of what we're doing, the fact that there's an element of the study which is going to address other byproducts that are going to be produced out of the helium and hydrogen. There's a complete evaluation process and the company that's doing this is highly regarded, very experienced, and it is a detailed exercise. So we're sort of trying to put, it's like a bit like trying to put a jigsaw puzzle together in the dark. You just have to take your time.
Well, I think, Anthony, I think what you're describing to me is you put yourself in a position to be able to do the drilling, to be able to do more of the show me, don't tell me
Correct.
part of this story. So, I'll leave it there. You continue to deliver as far as I can see. I look forward to seeing the next steps. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me.